Welcome to this last video, or at least what should be the last video in this tutorial series where we're going through the Dodge the Creepers tutorial game. In this video we're just going to be adding in a couple of things to give just that little bit of extra oomph to our game, and that is a background color and also some sound effects. So the first thing we're going to do is add our background in. Now we're going to do that by adding a new node called a color rect. It just basically gives you a rectangle that you can add a color to. Now it's important in this case that once you've added the color rect that you move it to be the first child under main, and that is just so that it is drawn underneath everything else that comes on. Otherwise it'll draw over the top of what else you've got, and we'll see that in just a second. So once I come over here and I do set a color, I'm just going to choose a sort of greeny bluey color. If you've got a color in mind, you can set its value as well, but I'm just going to choose this color here. That's fine. And I'm also going to size this so you can see it is drawing behind everything else on the screen. If however I had this down at the bottom, then you'll see that it'll actually draw over the top of some things. It doesn't draw over the top of the HUD actually, because that is a special layer, but later on you'll see it over the top of the enemies and stuff like that. So let's put it in the right spot anyway. You can try it in the wrong spot and see for yourself that it does in fact have an issue. The other thing I've noticed in this instruction talks about using the anchor presets for a full rect. I'm having a lot of trouble with that working. Whenever I do it, it seems to just lock it down to this tiny little piece. So I've manually sized this. So you can either do that by dragging it to be bigger than your window, or you could go to layout and transform, of course, and set some values here that at least match the size, if not bigger, than your window or the game space. The issue with not using one of the anchors, of course, if this was a game that had the screen being able to be resized, then it would not follow that. So it is something that we probably need to solve, but for right now, at least in the version I'm using, setting that anchor preset does seem to break it. So maybe it worked for you, maybe it didn't. But yeah, for me anyway, it didn't work, so I'm just going to manually set this. The next thing I want to do is add some sound. Okay, so we do that again by adding two new nodes, both of the same type, audio stream player. One's going to play some music in the background, and the other's going to play the sound when we die. So again, with main as our node selection, let's add in some new ones. Audio, and we want stream player 2Ds. Now, sorry, not 2D, sorry, just audio stream players. There are 2D and 3D because you can do positional sound in Godot, so you can make it sound like the sound's coming more from the left or the right or even forwards and backwards. But we just want straight sound, so we're going to use the audio stream player. So let's add a second one of those in, and we're going to rename those to be music and death sound. So let's rename this one to be music and this one to be called death sound. Again, make sure you get your capitals and everything correct, otherwise any code etc will have a problem. Now with audio stream players, you just need to put the file that is going to play. So we already have two files that came with all our other assets. So for the music, we have this house in a forest loop, so we're going to just drag that into here. And for the death sound, we have one called game over, which we're going to drag in there. Now, one thing that is important is that whenever you bring any sound into an audio stream player, the loop option is turned off, as it says over here. We would like our music to loop through, so if someone plays long enough that the music gets to the end, we want it to play again seamlessly, so we would like to set that. So with our music one chosen, we need to turn that on. So we need to click on the stream file down. Okay, we need to first we'll make it unique, which basically just means this is a special one. We then need to click again and put the, where is the loop? I think it's in the arrow again actually. No. So I'll click on the actual file. Sorry, my fault. That brings out this extra box, and we turn the loop on. So again, that was first of all make it unique, and then turn on the loop. Okay, and that will make this particular version one that loops. It means that if you were to use the exact same sound file somewhere else, that's what that unique's about, and then it doesn't automatically loop that version as well. We need to add a little bit of code in, so to play the music we need to add this bit of code in our new game. So let's go copy that, go into our main code and find our new game section, and maybe just at the bottom we will add that bit of code. So it says, hey, take the music play that we named over here and play whatever's in there. So that's been added, and in a similar way we need to stop the music in our game over. So again, just up here we'll add that in, and finally we need to add the death play to the game over section. So also in the game over section, we will play the death sound, okay? We don't have to stop this anyway, because remember that's not set to loop, so it'll play it once and automatically be at the end. So if we play that now, again saving, it did it automatically. You can see my color is there. You may hear the music or not. I'm not sure if I turned that on in the recording. Trust me, it is playing, and I have a game over sound as well. So again, you may not have heard it in this recording because the computer audio is possibly not turned on to be recorded, but trust me, it is working. And the last thing we want to add in here is a keyboard shortcut. So we're using keyboard controls, ASWD, or the arrow key, sorry, to move our player. So instead of having to use a mouse to click the start button, which I'm currently doing, it would probably be good if we could press a keyboard shortcut. So in a similar way that we created the input maps, right, we need to create a new input action called start game, and we're going to map that to be the enter key. Okay, so let's go and do that again. So we're going to go to project, we're going to go to project settings. Remember, it's the input map. We're going to add a new action. The action is going to be called, what did we want to call it? Start game, with an underscore in the middle. And the action that's going to have that, once we put it in, we're going to add in a keyboard key. Actually, we can just press it here. It's going to be the enter key. Okay, so press OK, and we've added that one in now. So after creating our map for the start game with the enter key, we're now going to come to our button in our HUD. So we've gone to our HUD, we've gone to our start button, and over here we have this shortcut option. So if we expand that out, we'll see there is no shortcut at the moment. In fact, for this I am going to bring the inspector a bit wider so I can see this a bit more easily. So the shortcut will say, hey, we would like a new shortcut. For the type, so we come down here, open up the event, and we say we want to add an element. Now this is a little bit confusing, you could just got to go with me for a second. Alright, what is the element? Well, it's going to be an input event action, okay? Because we want to use the action we set up in the project settings. So it's going to be new input event action. All these other ones are useful for different things. We could actually just do this directly with an event key, but we're going to go with the action so that we could also potentially have a button press on a joypad or something like that triggering the same action instead of having to create new ones for each type. So new action, the action itself, if we click on this now, the action, what is it? Well, this is where we used the name that we used before. So that was the start game. It's spelled exactly the same as we set it up in the project settings before. And that's really all we should have to press here, or do here, sorry. So if I just again shrink this down a little bit, try running the game. Again, I'm not using my mouse. You can actually see my mouse is up here. If I press my enter key, it's the same as if I had pressed the play button, also the start button with my mouse. So we've essentially added in a shortcut key for that start. Okay, and again, the fact that we've used the action I mentioned before things like the joypad, for example, having a button there. But if I go back to project settings, and I come down to the start game, I might like to add another button in keyboard key, because what would be maybe the logical thing that people might think that they need to press, I'm going to go with the S key. So if I look for an event and I press S, okay, then I've got the option of enter or S starting the game, and I don't have to change any of the other code or anything else anywhere else, just by adding this extra button in. Again, if I close this now and run my game, again, you're just going to have to trust me on this, but I'm not using my mouse, I'm not pressing enter, but I press S. Again, I've got that same functionality, so that's why using the event action is a good way to trigger this. Alright, that is literally the end of our tutorials. As it says in a few places throughout this, but especially at the end here, feel free to expand the gameplay with your own ideas. Now, what I'd suggest you do is make a copy of this folder with all of the content in it, and either edit that copy or the original, but keep a backup copy of your finished tutorial just so you've got that there. If you're in my class, I will be asking for that to be submitted at some point, but it's always good to have sort of like the starting or end point of the tutorial as a starting point for something else. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you have been reading through the details. As I've said over and over again, what we're doing here in this video is not going through every single command and everything about it. We're just sort of going through the logistics of getting it into the Godot engine. You needed to read through the content here to try and understand more thoroughly what each command does for you. Please always ask lots of questions if you're in my classes, and if you're not, feel free to leave a comment or yes, talk to someone who knows a little bit more about Godot and might be able to help you out.